although we've escaped a lot of civility and First Amendment issues on our campus in terms of not having a lot of problems crop up, it's anticipated that this kind of thing will be something that becomes more and more in the forefront of students' concerns and faculty concerns in the next decade. So we've invited two of our friends, our best friends from higher education in Virginia, Rear Dawson Wilson from the University of Virginia, who also was our neighbor at Hampton University for 19 years, where she ran the student union. At this point in time, she is the director of Newton Hall in the University Union at the University of Virginia. She is also a talented musician, being quite accomplished as a pianist. She is a nationally and internationally recognized speaker in multiculturalism and a trainer. And she comes to us today right off of a retreat in Northern Virginia last evening. But no problem is too big for Rear Dawson Wilson. I went to school with her at Hampton University and again at William & Mary. And during our tenure at William & Mary, when she was in the doctoral program, she was continuing to manage the student union. Nothing ever daunted Rear. Fires in university halls a day or so before thousands of freshmen were to descend on campus. That was not a problem for her. She simply began to commandeer local motels and hotels and private residences near the campus to house the students. So she comes to us as a veteran in higher education in terms of all of the things that can go right and go wrong at colleges and universities, and also as a good friend and neighbor. Our other speaker is Fred Talbot. Fred comes to us from Old Dominion University, where he is a professor in the English department. He is also an award-winning news reporter and journalist. He's a journalism educator. He is a public affairs consultant, and you may have read in our local paper recently that he was a consultant to the White House speechwriters. He has written for Saturday Night Live and is currently working on a novel in the Stephen King genre. He lives in Virginia Beach with his wife, Patsy, who happens to be a faculty member at Tidewater Community College in Chesapeake. So another close member of the higher education family on the peninsula. Without further ado, I bring to you Rear Dawson and Fred Talbot.
I have to readjust my mental state to be more civil, because 3 days in the woods was not anything that I want to share with you about civility. I'll tell you, I am not an outdoors person. I am really a luxurious person. I like jacuzzis and warm water and all of that. And we took 40 students who are our leaders of our university union up to Hemlock Lookout, or something owned by George Mason up in Northern Virginia. We got back last night about 5. I must tell you, I stayed in shower about a half hour. But it's nice to be here. I don't get to come home as much as I would like now that I have moved up to quote the university. And Fred and I were sitting here talking. You know, I can talk forever, but I'll try to put some kind of structure to this. And when I talked to him on the phone, we were saying, I was trying to think of, what civility meant and what I could say to you. I had done a workshop with some students from all the community colleges up in Charlottesville this early part of the summer. I met some of your wonderful students from Thomas Nelson. So I think you have great opportunities, but it's nice to talk to faculty because I can get away with it in the sense that I was faculty and taught in the graduate program at Hampton. And up until this very year, my mother was the VP for academic affairs at Hampton. And I had a ball talking to her about what I didn't think faculty did, and she'd come back and say, well, you all the student affairs don't do this, that, and the other. So I have this vantage point, too. Well, let me just tell you that I went to Indiana University in Bloomington, Indiana in 1960, actually, and majored in piano. And I went into my little raggedy dorm, and my dad has dropped me off. And the deal was, since you chose to go as far away from home as you possibly could, you could only come back home one time. Christmas. So I don't know what my thoughts were. I must tell you, I'd gone to all segregated high school. All my experiences have been segregated. But for whatever reasons, I wasn't prepared for when I got to my room that day and this young white woman walked in and her mother said, oh no, you can't live with her. I was thinking, is there something wrong? Of course, I was much smaller, much more attractive, and had a great head, yeah? that kind of experience so she can have the pleasure of my company. And then I think about what I see happening at UVA every day. We just keep up with the news. I don't have to tell anybody about our drug thing. I don't discuss that. I don't feel like it. But if you look at the kinds of things that are happening in terms of the Fijis, and they put the thing up that said no nigger babes, no wasp all over. And the Omegas did a big poster for something, and they held this white head with this sickle, and they were going to chop it off. And as I look at even what I saw up at Retreat Center yesterday, one of my colleagues was bringing to closure a very powerful and moving exercise, and the person in the kitchen wanted the dishes. So instead of just kind of waiting, or there were 4 other staff there with us, and just kind of, just letting him, he just walks in, we need the trays. And you just wonder. So I'm not sure what's happening out here in this world. And I have 2 daughters, both grown, thank the Lord. But one went to Howard and finished and is okay. The other is at the University of Virginia, and there's such a difference in what I have created, I must tell you, and I'm not sure I'm proud of it, some days I am. But in some ways, these young women have more stereotypes within them, more negative views of people who are different for whatever reason than I ever had in the environment that I came up with. And I must think that a lot of this really is due to the fact that I was taught from a child that one respects everybody, irregardless of what they are, and that we, in higher education, have become a very reactionary group of people. And that any time there's a problem, we manage by crisis, and we decide, well, we'll just give them what we want. And my clear example, and a lot of people don't agree with me, is that while we have so many separate organizations on our campuses, including yours, and while we allow them to continue without trying to do some things to pull them together. And if we look at the late 60s and 70s, there were all these reactions to everything that was happening in the civil rights movement and all those kinds of things. And what I really think happened is that we in higher education didn't know how to deal with it, didn't take the time to try to find out, didn't try to create methods for doing it. So we took this money and we said, here, take this money, go have your house, go have your floor, go have your little wing. And now we can't undo that. And we have created a generation of young people and old people and middle-aged people who really don't know how to treat each other and spend so much time emphasizing their differences and not looking for their similarities. And I think that's really the root of the problem. Now, how you solve it requires the effort of all of us. One of the things that I really like about this opportunity to talk with you this morning is that for too long, those of us in student affairs stay over there and say, well, we know how to do this, and we get along with them, and they like us because we don't give them grades. And those of you that are in the classroom don't take the time to come interact with them, and we don't come interact with you. So what we got is students in particular in the community colleges who, because of what they're doing, part-time, family commitments, and so forth, come, take their classes, go home, and then try to talk about their neighbors and beat their neighbors and put the flags out on the lawn with their neighbors, and there's never an opportunity for any kind of dialogue. So that's my little preference with that, since I can run on for a minute. But then when I was also looking for this, I ran across this article, and I wanted to just share with you 1 month of the kind of things that are happening on our campuses. This was April the 1st, vandals spray painted, Jew haters will pay, that was in quote. And other slogans on the office wall of the Michigan Daily at the University of Michigan in response to editorials condemning Israel for policies regarding the Palestinians. Southern Connecticut University reported they suspended 5 fraternity officers after a racial brawl. April the 2nd, several gay men at the University of Connecticut are taunted by 2 students who yelled faggot at them. April the 3rd, the University of Michigan faculty meet to discuss a proposal to require students to take a course on ethnicity and racism. And I must stop right there and telling you, requiring people to be civil is not going to get it. We have to role model, we have to be example setters, and we have to work with them. We can require all we want, but that is not going to guarantee that that person is going to go out of your class and be respectful of the person that he interacts with, or he or she interacts with. What else? It's a bunch of them. They just go on and on and on. They're real depressing. And then, you can say to me if you wanted to, but I wouldn't let you get away with it, is that those kinds of things happen to undergraduates. And I want to tell you that that's really not true. That happens to the people you're working with every day, because those people are the people that make decisions for your communities. So those are the kind of people who about a week ago, I read in the paper, decided that a woman that was 103 and black couldn't be buried in a particular cemetery. I don't know how many of you saw that. Those are the kind of people that decide that if your child is going to pass AIDS, then my children can't go to school with your children. So clearly this is not just the undergraduate population. I caught the tail end of your president out there too, where he clearly talks about the changing demographics and the kind of students that we're all going to be teaching and working with. So clearly we know that it's affecting all of us. I think one of the advantages you may well have as a community college is that you are more prepared to deal with part-time students, students who are older and students who are more non-traditional. And we like to just keep on saying, you know, we deal with these 18 to 22-year-olds and that once we get them there, they're okay. But that's not true either. I guess for higher education, one of the decisions schools like UVA will have to decide is how committed they are to civility, because I think that you can get away with talking about it and get away with having it on paper, but to really be committed to that means that we're going to have to enroll some different kind of people than presently are enrolled at the university. You know what I mean? So as long as we can function as the university and just be very, very selective, of course we don't do that in state schools, but be very, very, very selective about who comes, we will, you know, not really be impacted by so much of these things we think as, say, a Norfolk State. But what happens, of course, is clearly that my colleagues and I are really ill-prepared to deal with the students who do the things like make the signs and the flyers and so forth. So, moving on, time is running out, I'm afraid it'll kill me too. There's the book out. I know, how many of you are familiar with this? Well, see, that's the student affairs profession. We are calling this the Bible of the year. I really would encourage you to read it. I don't have time or the energy to share all of it with you. But it's called Campus Life in Search of Community. And it's done by the Carnegie Foundation and in particular Boyer. And I had the privilege of hearing him speak in the last 3 months. And he talks about the importance of community. Community being made up of faculty, staff, and students. And that if one part of the community is concerned about student civility, then the other part must be concerned. And as long as only one portion is concerned, then it won't be. Anyway, he talks about this book. In this book, he talks about the abusive language we hear, the lack of respect that we have for each other, the separation and unhealthy ways that we see going on, the biases against women, the racial tensions. He talks about all those kinds of things, the gay bashing, and things that unfortunately I must tell you I see every day. And what he does is some kind of, and then he talks about changing demographics. But what he does is after looking at all of these things and conducting some research, he comes up with what he feels are 6 principles for creating the kind of community we're going to need in order to be able to survive. And as my students said up at the retreat, they don't like the word multiculturalism, so they said the M word. And I just jumped all on them too about not saying the M word, you know. And we got into healthy debates up there about being politically correct and so forth. But I want to tell you that I came away renewed because it was an open and an honest dialogue. I do not agree with being politically correct, but I felt like they had an opportunity to say whether they did or they didn't, and their thoughts in a very safe environment. Nobody came away from there screaming and yelling and cussing. And those are the kinds of opportunities I think you're going to have to create in whatever it is you teach and do at Thomas Nelson, so that your students have a chance for dialogue. Anyway, in the 6 things he says is that for this community that we need, they've got to be educationally purposeful. And by that he means that faculty and students must share academic goals and work together to strengthen teaching and learning on campus. That's the purpose of what it is we do. The other thing he says is that we've got to have open communities, and that's the one I'm going to come back to, because the quote he uses is this one, where freedom of expression is uncompromisingly protected and where civility is powerfully defended. The third thing he talks about is it's got to be a just community, where the sacredness of the person is honored and where diversity is aggressively pursued. The fourth one is a disciplined community, and what he says there is that individuals must accept their obligations to the group, and where else they define governance procedures. In other words, where the rules and regulations are just and fair and we will follow. The fifth thing he says is that it's got to be a caring community. And I always like that word. I just kind of like that. It goes with my musical sense. Where the well-being of each member is seriously supported. And that's really important for me. I think that we teach our students to take risks and in doing that, we got to make sure that we care about them. I think probably the thing that makes me successful, frankly, in my endeavors is that I really do like my students, even the ones that drive me crazy that day. And I think that we have to be able to demonstrate that. I think that's what makes us different from some businesses sometimes. And the last thing he says is that we have to be a celebrative community. We have to recognize and celebrate the traditions. You know, I joke a lot about Thomas Jefferson, but I must tell you that they have wonderful traditions at UVA. I joke about Hampton, but we had wonderful traditions. Those that make us celebrate that we are glad we are part of. And so, you know, I don't know how you do that other than conversation and communication. And I think that I want to tell you that if you don't do it, I don't know who will do it, particularly with the students you work with, because I may not ever see them in the union. And if I do, it may be to see a counselor, it may be to buy a book, it may be to pick up their registration, but it may not be, as it is in a typically undergraduate institution, to sit down and have a cup of coffee, or to go watch TV, or to shoot pool, because the union on a traditionally community college campus is really much more of a service-oriented than the one we have. So you really have golden opportunities to help these students become more civil. Of course, that makes one great assumption, and that is that you learn to be a civil person yourself. Because I expect that we have to be the role models and set the examples. Whether you like it or not, they didn't get it at home a lot of times. So whether you like it or not, this whole in loco parentis, I think we get confused by what that means versus what it means to demonstrate by example how you treat each other. So if you all can't communicate as faculty and staff, and you don't get along, and you pass each other and don't speak, and you talk about Mr. So-and-so in his class, and you talk about Miss So-and-so, and you make all those kind of comments, I really don't know what you expect your students to do. Because people learn best by example, whether they're older learners, young learners, little children, whatever it is. And I just think we have to start looking at that. And I'm going to sit down after I leave you with this thought that I found that I really liked by a Yale undergraduate committee and C. Van Woodward. And he said, no member of the community with a decent respect for others should use or encourage others to use slurs and epithets intended to discredit another's race, ethnic group, religion, or sex. It may sometimes be necessary in a university for civility and mutual respect to be superseded by the need to guarantee free expression. The values superseded are nevertheless important, and every member of the university community should consider them in exercising the fundamental right of free expression. The conclusions we draw then are these. Even when some members of the community fail to meet their social and ethical responsibilities, the paramount obligation of the university is to protect their right to free expression. If the university's overriding commitment to free expression is to be sustained, secondary social and ethical responsibilities must be left to the informal processes of persuasion, example, and argument. And I would suggest to you that the only places that persuasion, suggestion, and argument can occur so that our students will be civil are in your classrooms. I thank you and turn it over to Fred.
I think she said it all, so I'll go ahead and have a seat and pass around the water. I was really delighted to see that my reputation preceded me today. I was in the restroom washing up, and when I went to use the hand dryer, I noticed right above the button someone had written, "Push here for a talk by Fred Talbot." So, and Pam was nice to invite me. I said, "Well, I really appreciate you letting me come in and talk about this very, very meaningful subject." And she said, "Well, they've never really seen a guy with 3 chins before, so I thought we'd bring you on in." So, go ahead and bask in that one, I guess. We know the First Amendment. We know how important that is, and I think Greer just pointed out how significant it is on campus. It is campus. It is a university. It is a community college. I'm, by the way, delighted to be at a community college because I taught for 4 years at a community college in South Carolina, and it was wonderful. I mean, it was almost like parenting again because it was such a close relationship, I thought, with my students, and it was very diverse. It was predominantly black in South Carolina, and it was a wonderful, happy experience. I'm going to say a few things today that will get me in trouble. I'm always in trouble about higher education, universities in particular, and that don't exactly reflect what I just said about community colleges. So hang on for a second and let's see what happens. Got to laugh in the other room, by the way. That I pointed out. The First Amendment, 14th Amendment, no state shall deprive any person of life, liberty, and property, including their First Amendment rights, freedom of expression, chilling effects, prior restraint. You hear all these types of things from lawyers and First Amendment scholars and people who pretend they are like me. I really wonder what's going on right now. I see all kinds of strange things happening. In the 60s, we went out and marched and even had fistfights on occasion in my hometown of Petersburg to make certain that prejudice was basically eradicated. We partied together, we had fun together, we joked together. And I'm from the west end of Petersburg, which is a very, very rough, working class, predominantly black neighborhood. And all my friends could joke about everything, and we could play sports together, and we could be friends together, and we could succeed together and plan lives together. And the weirdest thing is, most of us from that neighborhood did okay. We became lawyers, we became doctors, we became pilots. And what happened? What clicked? We could joke about race. Joke about race. Call me whitey. What you doing walking around? You know, that type of thing. I could joke about it. We could joke about our mothers. Can you imagine? You joke about your mama. We're like, and everybody laughed and got along, and we loved one another. Can't do that now. Can't do it, especially about your mom. You said, what about my mom? You got called me the other day. He said, 25 years ago, you said, what about my mom? Girl, let me get on diversity. Listen to this statement. This is a really neat statement. The United States is a nation of individualism and rich cultural diversities. If there is any fixed star in our constitutional constellation, it is that no official, high or petty, can prescribe what shall be orthodox in politics, nationalism, religion, or other matters of opinion. In other words, let's have openness. Let's respect diversity. Guess when that was written? 1943 by Justice Robert Jackson. 1943. He got the light back then. We had it in the 60s and in the 70s. We're trying to get it back now. But as Greer said, certain things happened in the 60s and the 70s to sort of maybe lock up what we're doing now. Lock up the openness we have now. What about eggshells? Do any of you step on eggshells nowadays? You walk into class and be careful when you sit. I'm walking like, you know, that type of thing. Afraid you don't pop an eggshell, might offend somebody. Now I teach humor. I teach First Amendment law, I teach investigative reporting, and I teach humor. Excuse the term, I piss off everyone. You know what I mean? Everyone. Bro, investigative reporting at a university? Can you imagine that? It's like teaching demonics at a Catholic school. Incredible. What do you do here? And I teach my students, I say, question everything. Because the most open-minded person I ever met was a Methodist preacher. He was a professor at the college I went to. And he said, question your religion, question your faith, question God. It's the only way you'll ever have any faith. If you accept it openly without questioning it, you'll never believe it. So I tell my students, question everything. Everything that comes, all the good stuff, all the things, everything. Question. Question the war. In Norfolk, question the war. Can you imagine? You know, they have a stealth bombers like aimed at my classroom. What a time we had. But yeah, question it all. Because I don't want them, above all else, to be cowards and sissies and weaklings and wimps in society. And you know what scares me about all this? Because that's what I'm seeing now. I'm seeing a lot of chicken, bureaucrats, yes people, no dissent, or very little dissent, very little questioning. And that doesn't seem very American to me. For some reason, it seems cowardly. About a lot of things. I see black and white students on occasion who are great and very open and very caring, but so afraid to talk to one another. Why? Go talk to them. Then they talk and hit it off great. But why? Why is there fear now? Why are there eggshells out there? I say a little break all the eggshells. With humor, with questions, with columns in newspapers, okay, that sometimes reflect views we don't like. And then we go, that columnist is bad. That Jim Spencer, wasn't it? It's so bad because he questions whether the playing field we claim we're trying to make level is really level. Okay? He raised a question. Okay? So he's evil. Jim Spencer, to be honest with you, I worked with Jim Spencer at the Virginia Powell. And I've known him since, I guess, 1979. And I would dare say that Jim Spencer has personally, this is my music, by the way, I'm going to dance in 1 second. That's Jim now. But Jim has done more individually, I think, for the underdog than anybody I've ever met. I mean, this guy's out every Wednesday delivering lunches to people, okay, in the ghetto. And it is a ghetto in Newport News. People are afraid to come to the door. Okay? This guy, I've seen carry people out of houses after fires have devastated the houses. And but also, this guy will raise a question. We don't have enough devil's advocates, folks. We really don't, to raise questions in all these different areas, all these different areas. That's Fred preaching, and what does Fred know? Let me tell you a couple of things I've seen, though. Blind obedience. I've seen a lot of this at university. The PCs came through, what, about a year and a half ago, real strong. PCs, okay? I think they call it politically correct. I call it public censors, or putrid by convenience. I don't know. It's strange. There's always go on like that. And I said, well, what ism am I today? Just curious, okay? I was a racist one day. Worked in civil rights since I was 12, but I was a racist one day because I tried to help some younger faculty with their salaries, and an older faculty member hated me. So he turned me in as a racist on something I didn't do, okay, to a vice president under a system in which they didn't have to be named. In other words, I said, well, who said I wasn't a rapist? Well, we can't say that. I said, well, if I've been accused of being a rapist, I don't know who accused me. But if they're a racist, I don't know. That's right. Put him out of that. Sexist? Yeah. Put him out of that. I don't know. A linguist? I mean, God forbid. I don't know. But anyway, this types of things going on. Let me tell you a little bit about PCs. Randall Jarrell, in a little book called Pictures of an Institution, I think best defined the PCs. For Gertrude, the world existed in order to be put in its place. Okay, think about that. Going to work every day, I'm going to fix this world. I'll tell people exactly what they're doing. William Butler Yeats said, all empty souls tend to an extreme opinion. And Tertullian, if I can pronounce his name correctly, said the first reaction to truth is hatred. Okay. Harry Truman says, the corruption of truth, the abandonment of our devotion to fair play is the unfounded accusation against any citizen in the name of Americanism and righteousness. This horrible cancer is eating at the vitals of America, and it can destroy the great edifice of freedom. Harry Truman said it. But PCs? No. He said it about McCarthyism. And I see a few similarities there, for some strange reason. Let me tell you about PCs just quickly, because we talked about our experiences with race and with diversity. I think PCs are racist. I think it's a racist-based process, not intended. I got that from the president of our student chapter in the ACT. Because he said, you know what's happening? He said, these people are putting us over in a corner, and we don't want to be in a corner. We want to be operating as students and as student leaders. But they're saying, no, let's put them on a pedestal, put them over to the side. He said, Mr. Teller, we've been to the side for 400 years. We don't want that anymore. Let me tell you what happened with PCs during the last year or so. The only racial attack I've ever heard of Governor Wilder came from a leading PC on my campus. When Governor Wilder did something that went against the grain of the Almighty, he said, you got to give back part of the pay raise. So my department's PCs got together and wrote a vicious personal attack against Governor Wilder. It wasn't racist, it was just vicious. And I said, hey, you're not going to issue that statement. That's crazy. Okay? That's nuts. And it's wrong. The man's trying to balance, in effect, the spending and pay among Virginia employees. And then one of them took me aside and made a statement to me I couldn't believe about how blacks perceive higher education. This is one of our leading PC spokesmen. About 3 months later, I headed up a conference named the Glennon Lecture Series. And a gentleman by the name of Juan Williams came down. Juan wrote Eyes on the Prize. A wonderful individual. Just a good individual. He gave the best civil rights talk I've heard since I heard Dr. King when I was young. One person in my English department showed up. Here. 2 mentioned it in the classes. We're not going to have the Glennon Lecture Series anymore. Over there. Guess why they didn't show up? Most of them. Take a wild guess. Just wild. Not race. You look at my little, in the little handout there, I also had up something called freedom of information. That means openness, open government, whatever. And 2 years ago, my students printed salaries at Old Dominion University. And all the faculty raised hell on it. And I stood with the kids and said, it's open information. A couple of my faculty colleagues got 17 and 26% pay raises. And they fomented hatred against me. So Juan Williams came, and I pushed, hey, really, let's get all of our students there to hear this message. Fred Talbot is involved. Then lastly, I've been helping the NACP put together a newsletter on a Macintosh computer. Boy, talk about writing. Good Lord. Caring, ethic, quality, excellence. Okay? Took them in the Mac lab one day, president, the vice president, all excited, never used the Macintosh, all the graphics. 2 students were there. We worked on the Mac. They said, we'd love to work with you on this newsletter. It would be wonderful. Wonderful to work with. They're excited. I'm looking. 2 white students, 2 black students. Perfect partnership. Like it. Great sense of humor. Great quality ethic. Okay? So this is fantastic. The student tells me, and I quote, yeah, we do it for a lot of student organizations. Students who are taking the advanced graphics are encouraged to do newsletters. Organizations, some people even do it for businesses outside the university. Okay? President of the NACP chapter came to see me 2 days later and said, Stella, let me do it. Why not? Went to see the grad student who told us, come on in. Then what she said. Told him we were going to do it for a student organization. Professor said, great. PC professor, great. Told him it was the NACP chapter. It's great. Told him you were the one helping him. He said you can't do it. Now, I don't mind being a troublemaker and stirring the pot. But what did that do to those students? You know? And that's what made me realize, finally, that PC is a matter of degree and a matter of convenience. If it isn't, let's take this test real quick. How many of us own a house, or none of us own a house? How many of us are indebted forever in mortgage? Okay? Okay? If we really, if PC is pure and diversity is totally pure, I'm part Native American. Okay? How many of us would be willing to, in the purest ethical sense of diversity and fairness, give our deeds over to Native Americans and go back to wherever my people came from? How many of us would do that? How many of us would apologize for the, in effect, genocide we committed on Native Americans? Many of us done it? How many of us would go over to 7-Eleven, 4 miles from here, for a buddy of mine who has a master's in civil engineering? He's working at 7-Eleven because he's Iranian. He was a pilot fighting for the Shah, who was one of our closest allies, and then lost everything, including the right to ever see his family again, when he had to abandon, under penalty of death, his nation for us. And now he's over here, and his line's being tapped by the FBI. He's being hassled every day. He's a great butt of jokes on Saturday Night Live. I don't write them. Okay? He's Iranian. But he's not in the category now we're dealing with, is he? The Native Americans aren't either. All of us should come together, I think. The one thing I try to preach, and you can tell now I'm preaching a little bit. Pam's saying, no jokes, no jokes. But, because I do so many jokes. But this is serious for me. One thing I try to teach, and I try to teach my daughter, is for God's sakes, let's all go blind for a while. Because it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. The only 2 things I can't control are my heritage. Really, I can't control that. I wasn't there. And my skin color. I can't control that. I wasn't there. It just happened. I'm sorry. But let me tell you about the taste of that, of all of it, and how I got the message. Being raised in Petersburg, in a rough area, I went to the rough school. I was telling Greer about this. First day in high school, the rich kids from the rich kids school came, where most of the teachers lived. Okay? We're asking class. I don't know these kids. I'm scared to death. My height, this size head, 120 pounds. You can imagine. Okay? Talk about embarrassed. I'm walking in, I'm sitting there like this. Teacher says, everybody, where are you from? What's your name? Where are you from? What do you want to do? Go up now. Kid in front of me. I'm from Walnut Hill. My dad's a lawyer. I want to be a lawyer. Okay? Second kid, engineer. I stand up. I've been to the newspaper 3 weeks earlier. I stand up. Fred Talbot, I'm 1146 West Washington Street. I think I want to be a writer. I said, oh, thank you. After class, she calls me up within earshot of the other kids. Says, where did you say you're from? I said, 1146 West Washington Street. I said, you're from Nigger Town. You don't be a writer. And I hated high school's guts from that point on. And I got it with a C average because I just despised it. Turned off completely. Turned off completely. The other part of it that I heard, and I hear this a lot, is you ain't nothing. You're not going to amount to anything. You crap. Who do you think you are? I heard that white community. I hear it now. My students coming to me and saying, crying. One guy. I said, where are you? You always do great work and then you don't finish the semester. What's going on? He says, I go home to Churchill in Richmond. And every time I do this, who the hell do you think you are? Come in here talking like that. You think you're smart, don't you? Who do you think you are? And then you get some bites. Okay. I don't know what we can do, but I tell you, in class, sometimes we've got to re-nurture. Sometimes we've got to retrain. Sometimes we've got to reparent, even, to be good and effective teachers. We've got to do more than we've ever been called upon to do before. Because they're not doing it in the street. They're not doing it at home. They're not doing it in the bureaucratic hell known as elementary, junior high, and high school. Now, they don't have time with 40 and 50 kids piling in there every hour. So we've got to do it. And I think we can do it. But anyway, let me throw a few things your way if I could, because I think they're kind of nice, and I like them, and I think it's wonderful. First of all, one thing that I'm amazed at in higher education is this. Everything that doesn't work, we're creating something new. Everything that doesn't seem to work in higher education, but we keep, is called tradition. You notice that too? It's like it has no meaning. It's like, what is tradition? Well, it is. It's been like that for a while. You know? I'm thinking, my God. Tradition does not mean that the living are dead. It means that the dead are living anyway. Booker T. Washington. A lot of my friends, because I studied black culture in college before you were supposed to. Really, in 1969, I went over to Bethune-Cookman for 6 months and really got out in the community and the whole thing. And back then, a lot of my buddies who were Muslim men, and I was real big with Malcolm X. I mean, the guy's right. You've got to read the guy. I mean, he's awesome. And also Dr. King, who was a real hero, the only hero we had. But Booker T. Washington's Tom, you know, Tom. That's my buddy said, Tom, we're tearing in his statue. I said, don't mess with his statue, he's dead. Listen to this. This is kind of nice. The black man who cannot let love and sympathy go out to the white man is but half free. The white man who retards his own development by opposing the black man is but half free. And that's true, because whenever I see anyone who doesn't tolerate someone else because of the way they look, listen, I mean, good, right, they're half, excuse the term, assed. They really are. They look stupid. It's crazy. You can't, I don't like her the way she looks. I don't like it, you know. You'll see me when I had zits and stuff, you know. Don't make fun, come on. Walt Whitman says, whoever degrades another degrades me. And that's how I feel like that. When somebody degrades someone else. You feel degraded yourself, don't you? If you're around some redneck or whatever, and they're doing it, or some, let's face it, a brother in the street, you know, attacking a white guy. Let's face it, you feel cheap. You feel like you've been attacked. And then Martin Luther King, and listen to what he said. This is beautiful. Not the way I read it, but it was beautiful when he read it. He said, I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation when they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. If we're going to judge people for any reason, let's do it on the basis, and the only basis, of character. That's the key. I really do. I think that's the blind spot right there. Then we don't look anymore at what you look like. Look at what you do, who you are, from what you do. But I'll talk too much now. Pam, I'll turn it over to you, and away we go. Thanks a lot.
At this point in time, we have about 10 minutes for you to address questions to either Fred or Greer, or just observations that you might want to make.
Or any water if you'd like.
We got it. We got it. See, that's called being civil. I didn't want to interrupt him while he was talking, but I wanted this water.
Any questions or comments?
Any comments or questions?
Great, yeah.
Yes, sir.
I see how, being PC, being a white male is a 4-letter word, or being phallocentric, or whatever they say. But a question I have is how do you, the society is changing.
Yeah.
And how do we integrate women writers, black writers, gay writers? How do we integrate them into the curriculum? It it seems, as you were saying, the leadership is coming from outside.
I tell you what, I try to find good writers. That's what I do. And if they're women or black or what, good writers.
Fun.
How do we get good writers? Is the question I would ask you. How do we get them?
By nurturing. But the question, I guess the observation I have is from the outer society, when you have, a president running on a racial, the Willie Horton campaign, doesn't that give the racists on the campus ammunition, just as the same way, you're saying about lack of strong people being un-American, or perhaps we're just a passive-aggressive society, just as we have, when we have, blacks being anti-Semitic, or...
Everybody's pointing at everyone else.
Right,
You know what?
and no one speaks up against it.
Yeah, but why not?
I
think it's because of eggshells again. I think
Right.
everybody's afraid.
Right.
And you talk about great writers. The hardest thing I'm finding now in nurturing good writers is a lot of people are afraid to write from their gut. They're afraid to. They're afraid, man, I want chicks, man. They're afraid to do it. They may be perceived as something is. And it's crazy. But you know something, and I know she's ready to go.
No, I was just thinking, I just don't have these fears.
I want to say one thing about the whole process that I think it's just a strategic thing. I just like to leave with you. Your president today mentioned one of the main factors is globalization. Okay? And I want to ask you this, and this sounds terrible, but it's true. We're in this country now, pointing at one, you're black, you're white, you're this, and you're that, and we're pointing at one another, and we're licking one another's wounds and everything. And I'm thinking, and we're slowing down. It's taking a lot of time, a lot of energy, like he said. Okay? We're slowing down our process. And there are two great nations, right now, that are economically setting themselves up to not level the playing field, but to own it. And neither of those nations, excuse me for saying this, has a historical perspective of honoring ethnic or social diversity. Think about it. And when they do decide what I'm going to be doing when I'm 50, okay, I don't really think any of this is going to matter. They're going to say, who's excellent? Over here. Who's not? Over here. I don't care what color. We want efficiency and excellence. And they're coming. And we're sitting over here whining.
Yeah, I guess the other piece of that is internal thing. Yeah. I think you have to become risk takers. I don't know, but for me, quite frankly, I don't need anybody's approval to do what I think is the right thing. So when I was teaching, William and Mary probably sorry they gave me that degree sometimes. Because I can act, I give all the time in class about counseling theories not being relative to women, not being relative to blacks and Hispanics. And now look at what's happening. Everybody's writing a book. I should have been smart enough to write it myself. Yeah. I guess for me, what I expect of people that are part of this wonderful academic arena is that they will be risk takers. So therefore, their students will be risk takers. My students that I have all over this country are just about as crazy as I am. And I think what they see is that I have survived, so they too shall survive. This thing about this, all about these different kinds of writers, I look for good writers. What I expect for you to do, though, is clearly to research it and not be comfortable with your syllabus from 10 years ago and go find the black writer and go find the Hispanic writer. And that's what you got to be willing to invest the time.
I must say that I was never afraid to write from my gut until quite recently, which put a thought in my mind, maybe I better really think about what I say. And I thought it was a infringement on my freedom of speech and my freedom to write. But it was a terrifying experience. I mean, I almost went to jail, but that was just how I felt. So sometimes
you wrote or something?
It was something I wrote. It wasn't against anyone in particular, but it was just.
And see, that's what, in constitutional law, that's what we call a chilling effect. You've got prior restraint, which is very dangerous. That means you can't write what you say you're going to write. That stops you. And the Supreme Court despises that. That's one of the worst things to ever come before the court. almost every time they'll say, no, you cannot have prior restraint unless the nation is in danger. But for someone to put out, be it PCs or be it whomever is in power, to say, you better not write that. You can write it if you want, but we're going to kick your butt if you write it, or we're going to ruin you if you write it. That's a chilling effect, and that's just as bad.
I think the other thing is, and then I'll call on this, is that part of what we're seeing is a reaction to the loss of power. That the people in power realize that all of a sudden the demographics are going to change, and those people who never had any power the perception is that we're going to take over their country and go treat them like they treated other oppressed groups of people by gender or whatever. So what is part of this from a psychological point of view is a reaction to fear of loss of power. I think that a lot of that has to do with it. The gentleman in the blue shirt.
But what do you do with great writers who are offensive to some students? Say Faulkner uses the word nigger so often.
Just talk it through. Talk it through. Really. I mean, in the 60s, we read everything. We read the Marquis de Sade, for God's sake.
I had students who come to me and say, I'm really offended by his use of the word nigger.
And I would say, I really can appreciate your offensiveness, but let's talk about why. And then in my next class, we would talk about it. And how it does offend some people, and when do we step over that boundary? And how can, I mean, that's the conversation of it, that's the learning experience.
And to me, that's the sissy baby part of it too. I'm sorry, but when society says, I just can't handle this, you know, this book makes a woman look like, oh God, a housewife, oh my God. And I'm thinking, hey, get a life, you know what I mean? There are housewives out there, all right? But if you don't like that image, let's talk about it. But most of them, oh no, and I don't, it scares me, because they're going to kick our butts. They really are. I'm serious.
I mean, if you woke up to the news this morning,
Hey.
okay? Now you can keep on talking all this garbage in this country if you want to. Country gonna be gone. I mean, you know, when you went to bed last night, Gorbachev was in power, and when you woke up this morning, ain't nobody seen the man.
And the missiles are cops.
You know?
That's right.
So put this thing in perspective. And it really, if you don't teach your students who run, you know, our students, whether they're my undergraduate students or your students in the community college or the graduate students, those are the students that are out here that do these kinds of things and make these kinds of statements. And some of them get in positions of power. But I mean, I tend to, as I have gotten older, I was a radical in college, I must tell you. But I can honestly say that some of my best friends were white. I ain't had no choice. When I went to Indiana University and majored in piano, there were 30,000 students, 200 blacks, and I was the only undergraduate black piano major. And what did you think I was going to do, flunk out of college? So I had to learn to get along, and they had to learn to get along with me, because I didn't have the luxury of going to live someplace else. And see, my mama told me, don't come home. You know, that was just as clear as that. Come on with your degree.
But she talked with people, and I talk with people, and that's a lot of the problem I think today. They're not talking.
The thing that scares me is that when you turn the TV on every night, there are examples of just hundreds of examples of people being uncivil to each other, and it's almost like we're saying it's okay. You see baseball players beating up on each other with baseball bats, and you say, it looks like they're saying that's all right.
What happened to goodness? That's what I want to know. The one thing, really, when we raised my daughter, it was the main thing. When my mother asked, well, what do you want her to be? When she's 3, 4 years old. I thought, well, of all the things, I want her to be good. And I'm not bragging, but she's a good little person. Cares a lot about everything. Animals as well. You know, just everything. Life. What happened to that?
Well, part of what happens to that is that we don't practice what we preach. Example, we'll talk about all this garbage that's on TV, but we still watch it. We'll talk about all the garbage that they put in the newspapers, and we still pay our subscriptions.
Too many people take advantage of their goodness.
That's right. You know, so and until those of us who are the silent people and don't like what's going on take some stands and stop watching the TV shows and stop reading the papers and say that that offends me and somebody hears it, then it will continue, because we allow other people in positions of power to make decisions for us. And that's where I always get in trouble, because I don't let anybody make a decision for me unless I have some say.
So we all get in trouble. Someone mentioned too, I think
one of the things that we better teach our children, aside from goodness, is toughness.
Oh, yeah.
And to realize that, April, when you go out in the world and people are unjust to you or try to get you not to say what you think is the right thing or do the right thing, it's okay to do the right thing, it's okay to say the right thing, and hear some things, and in other words, sort of a self-defense.
Well, I'll tell you, there's a funny thing. My theory with the students coming through now, through college now, is that they do have a very, very strong base, believe it or not, of goodness. I mean, I think a lot of people have tried to
You
pass
see
this
that
on.
in all of the things, you know what's happening. If you look at the trend with community, with volunteerism, and you look at the amount of stuff that's happening in terms of civic education. I was at the Kettering Foundation for a 3-day workshop. And if you look at the kinds of things that faculty are doing to really help students in terms of working with the community, giving back, and I'm talking about being more than a little candy stripers and ice cream. I'm talking about real value. It's out here. People and college students, I'm amazed, but really are giving of their time and energy to communities. So we need to seize that in the academic classroom.
But adding to what Pam said, many of those who I've noticed have had a very, very positive, ethical, good streak to them are very courageous as well. They don't take any crap. They really don't. I mean, they'll stand right up to a situation. A college president, and that's nice. I mean, I like it.
Yeah, and I guess I would say to you that I want to make sure that you encourage that and support that. When you see that a student is taking a stand or something, or they come in your class and they take a position that's not necessarily popular, but it's something they believe in, that you encourage that, you support that, and you give them the kind of strokes that they need to continue doing that, because if they can do it in your classroom, they can do it in their everyday living too.
That's why I'm taking the stand in terms of my students printing salaries. Can you imagine alienating everyone in here? Would they print your salaries? I know, don't make that sort of thing. But seriously, and you stand with them. But why not? That's why I'm there. Really. That's in loco parentis in effect. But yeah, and I believe in openness. So daggone right, I'll stand with them. And it's easy. They'll hate your guts forever. Some of the faculty. Anyway, it's okay. Any other comments or anything? We're going to bring the Poodle Act in now with Hoops. All right? I was into that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Ready for our 30-minute break now?
Good morning. It's still 11:45, it's still morning. Let's try it one more time. Good morning. You outbeat the last crowd. We've all heard on the news from Dr. Franklin, we're having to do more with less these days and still provide our excellence and our service at top quality. And it's calling us to be creative, do things a different way. It's not going to be the way we've always done it. So today we're delighted to have someone here to share his thoughts on creativity and turning obstacles into opportunities. Chip Thompson has made a career of sharing his thoughts on creativity in today's business climate. His goal is to encourage an environment where creative thinking and innovative action are a way of life. Chip received his BS in chemistry from the University of Delaware and his master's in education from the University of Virginia. He's worked for W.L. Gore and Associates of Gore-Tex Spain, Johnson & Johnson, Walt Disney, and Newton Product Development and Marketing. Chick is adjunct faculty at the Federal Executive Institute, the University of Virginia, and the FBI Academy. He has also consulted in General Electric's workout process, designed to instill speed, simplicity, and self-confidence in his global workforce. Chick's other clients include Hewlett-Packard, Philip Morris, DuPont, NASA, and CIA. In 1985, he started Creative Management Group to provide training on creativity, entrepreneurship, and continuous improvement. Stories of his training have appeared in the Wall Street Journal, USA Today, Success Magazine, and Nation's Business. He's just finished a book, What a Great Idea, to be published by HarperCollins in January 1992. May I present Chip Thompson?
Thank you. I come to you not as an academic. Actually, Bob can tell you, because I knew Bob back at PBCC about 8 years ago. When I get introduced to the Federal Executive Institute to go and teach a one-day course on creativity, I get introduced as the only one on faculty with worse grades than Dan Quayle. I'm a C&D student, 8 years to get out of undergraduate school, because at Delaware you had to have German to get a BS in chemistry, and I have a learning difficulty. I have got what's called dyslexia. I reverse words and numbers and have somewhat of a tough time as far as in the comprehension, especially of a foreign language. So I went off to work after my 5th year of college, still being on probation, and went off to work for Bill Gore. I met Bill Gore in a tennis tournament in 1970, and we were playing along, and after the tournament he said, "What do you like to do?" And I said, "Mr. Gore, I love coming up with ideas, and I just love working in the lab." And he said, "You know, I've just left DuPont, and I've created a new type of Teflon, and I'm going to start my own company, and we've just moved into a small little facility. Why don't you stop out sometime?" So I went on out to look at his facility, and basically he hired me with the job description is that every Friday I needed to go walking into his office with a new use with this type of Teflon, and he was going to call it Gore-Tex. So those of you that are into the athletic field know about a form of Teflon, it's called PTFE chemically, that actually allows air to go through it, but is a bacteria or a viral barrier, and it's a barrier for other elements too that could be used as a filter. That's what we thought of then. We made filters for Travenol, Baxter. We made face masks, Surgine face masks. Johnson & Johnson coated them. And we made a number of different products. We then got into the camping gear and various areas, but those were successful ones. We also tried things that have not worked. You have not seen a Gore-Tex condom, but we tried it. Being young chemists at the time, it was, you know, one tried for the unreasonable, and just tried to stretch and see how far we could get. So we tried those. We tried Gore-Tex bed sheets for hospitals because you wouldn't have to, it would be so smooth that a patient wouldn't get the cubital ulcers, and that you would just have to wipe it down. It would be considered hospital clean. Unfortunately, it was so slippery that patients were sliding down. So we were going to have to redesign the hospital bed to try to meet the needs, you know, of this fabric. So we had a lot of fun in the experimental area. And then I went to J&J and developed medical products for them for a year, and then went to Disney and got involved with Epcot and health education. And in the mid-70s, decided to start my own company just to try to go and take some of the stuff that I learned from those organizations and also try to spread the word about creativity, of why we need to look at things differently. Today is a very important day in why we need to look at things differently because of what happened at midnight last night with Gorbachev. I know the stock market's going to be different today. I know President Bush's vacation is going to be different. And the interesting thing about all of that is that even though, as all the reports come on out, we say we knew a little bit about this, most people didn't expect it. I've spent a lot of time with General Electric. They have a chief executive, brilliant visionary named Jack Welch. And he tells a story about the same time last year. He said, we spent the last 2 weeks of July with all the top consultants around the world, all the GE gurus, been there 20, 30 years, saying, so what are we going to plan for 1991? Let's go and put all this to bed, and then I'm going to spend the first 2 weeks on vacation at a beach. So they put all the brilliant minds together, planned out GE, and Jack Welch tells the story of how he was sitting on the beach. And the word Saddam Hussein got on the radio on August 3rd, and nowhere in all of GE's planning had they ever considered the word Saddam Hussein. That changed everything that they had planned for those 2 weeks. So what I'm about to talk about is how can you change your mind, how can you use some techniques when a problem confronts you that's a crisis, that you just can't find a simple solution to. And these aren't things that come out of textbooks, these are techniques that come out of people's minds. I've spent the last number of years just searching people around the world to interview to say, how did you solve this? What did you do in your mind? Jonas Salk with the new work he's doing on AIDS. Yoshiro Nakamatsu in Tokyo. Yoshiro Nakamatsu, not many people know who he is, but you use his products. He invented the floppy disk. He invented the CD. He invented the digital watch. And he creates them all while he's swimming underwater. You might have seen him on The Lifestyle of the Rich and Famous, a multi-billionaire, because he gets a royalty on every floppy disk you use. And so trying to find out, so how you come up with these ideas. He's got 2,345 patents. That's more than double Thomas Edison. He's called the Thomas Edison of Japan, and he just invented a water-powered engine. she will not sell to the Middle East. And so it's going to be very interesting. It was revealed 2 weeks ago. And I want to tell you that probably the most inspiring part of that interview was at the end, I said, Dr. Nakamatsu, you're 62. You look like Dick Clark. We were talking a lot of American stuff. He looks just like the Japanese Dick Clark. We're the same size. And he eats some weird food that he created. He calls it Dr. Nakamatsu's Yummy Nutribrain. And it's eel and shrimp and seaweed, and it looks like ugly Tootsie Rolls. And he just pops 2 or 3 of them continually, and that's what he eats. Sleeps in a special chair. But he has a normal family, 3 or 4 children. Wife was there with him. And I said, what do you want to do now? And without skipping a beat, he said, I'm going to create invisible inventions for the rest of my life. I go, wow, you can create something invisible? And he goes, yeah, every teacher does every day of their life. He said an invisible invention is when you design a curriculum or teach a concept in a new way. And he says, that's what I want to do. I just want to teach. He says, I also want to work with government, and I'm going to work myself up the ladder. He was just announced 2 months ago as mayor of Tokyo. So here's a man that's dedicated, he's made his money in the private sector, is now dedicating his life to the public sector and to teaching. So hopefully you'll hear more and more about him. He's got a very unique philosophy on education, and you'll see more of him. So take some of the techniques from him, Henry Heimlich, Neil Armstrong, various people. And that's what's in this handout. This handout is not a 1-hour handout. This handout is for a 2-day course that we teach at the Federal Executive Institute and at UVA. And it's got about 10 or 12 rules of thumb in there, or things that you can do when you're stuck on a problem. So what I'm going to do is try to give you a Reader's Digest version of this, and then the rest of it I think is fairly intuitive. And to start off, I want to sort of say that the mind, sort of like this balloon here, because the human mind, quoting Oliver Wendell Holmes, once stretched to a new idea, never goes back to its original dimensions. So we're going to be a little different at 12:45 today. Just like this balloon, we put some air into it, let the air out, and stretch a little bit more. And so hopefully we will come up with some strategies during this hour to try to make it comfortable for you to open up the environment in your staff meetings, at the dinner table with your family, so that people will throw out ideas, and if some of them crash and burn, you don't get embarrassed about it. You just threw it out. Because remember back in school, go back as early as you can in school. What did it feel like when you raised your hand, said something, or got called on, and it was the wrong answer? Or was it a dumb question? Just talk with the person next to you. What did you feel like when you shouted out something or got called on, and it wasn't what everyone else or what the teacher wanted? What did you feel like? Just talk amongst yourselves for 15 seconds. Okay, so what did you feel like? How did it feel? Embarrassed. Anybody, here's the big question. Anybody make a pact with themselves after that experience and say, I am never raising my hand again? You never have. Good.
Still make stupid.
I get answers. Good. Now, the purpose why I bring that up is that, as I found out from first group, we understand some about Myers-Briggs, the difference between introverts, extroverts, and Myers-Briggs, and the way we gather information. There are 2 interesting things that we've researched in the area of introverts and extroverts regarding creativity. Introverts score higher on all 3 creativity inventories, significantly higher. However, in a meeting, introverts take 8 seconds longer to raise their hand than an extrovert. Now, we can figure out what that causes in a meeting. Meetings are usually run a lot of times by the more extroverted person, and if it's closing it down. So one of the things that we're trying to do is to open the environment, is to get people to go and not have that 8-second gap in between as far as when you're running a staff meeting. Make people feel comfortable to throw out ideas. So people say, well, how do you make people feel comfortable in a meeting? Well, I say, give me the rules of school. What were the rules that we actually walk into all meetings with? What were the rules from grammar school that have been ingrained in our mind? Just throw them out. Pardon me?
Shut up and listen.
Good. Shut up and listen. Good. Raise your hand. Always had to raise hands.
Ask questions.
Ask questions. Good. Keep going. Rules of school.
Don't shoot up.
Don't shoot gum. Good. One in your classroom.
Be prepared.
Be prepared. How to do your homework. Sit in your seat. Couldn't talk in class. Could you talk to the person next to you? Could you collaborate? Had to work by yourself. Did the seats have to be lined up with the squares? The tiles? Good. Good. Now, what if we did the exact opposite of that and said in our staff meetings, wait a minute, you don't have to raise your hand, we want people to speak out. Because the difference is in total quality management or continuous improvement, whatever our approach now to finding better ideas, it's not the teacher that has the answer or the department head, it's the people doing the specific tasks. And that's what we've learned in the last 2 years with General Electric, with their what's called workout process. You might have read about workout. It was the feature story in last week's Fortune magazine, the August 12th issue. It's been featured in Harvard Business Review, Wall Street, and Washington Post recently. And what it is trying to find better ways every day at General Electric, because they've realized that after they've downsized by 25%, that the remaining workforce of 289,000 people have more work than they did with 25% more people, but not the appropriate kind of work. They got junk work. They have more reports, more approvals, more meetings, more measurements, and more policies than they did 10 years ago with the 25% more people. So 42 of us got brought into GE, 2 for each GE business as consultants, to design a process for them to try to cut out and identify junk work. And junk work, by the global definition from Jack Welch, the CEO, was anything that got in any employee's way of the customer, of serving the customer. So we tried to get them to ask questions. Well, why do we do it this way? And phenomenal things started coming out as you would read that article. I had in my one business, GE Fanuc, which is a joint venture with Japan. Fell on the receiving dock. He said, in this group, he said, because he was a strong introvert, had been with GE for 18 years, he said, when we asked a question, why do we always do it this way, or what reduces your self-confidence? And he said, what part of my job is calling up people when their FedEx packages arrive? And that's fine. But why do I have to call them a second day, and a third day, and a fourth day to come down for their FedEx package when we paid all that money for it to come overnight? And I'm not talking about just letters. I'm talking about motors. I'm talking about, boxes and stuff. And no one in the group could really answer it, so we surveyed and we talked to various forms of management. Anytime in this one GE facility, a GE manager would say, I need it, secretary would say, FedEx it, because that was the GE way. So this got turned in as a suggestion. They educated the workforce about second-day delivery, postal service, and various trucking. Last year, it was just announced that that gentleman won an award for a cost savings of $57,410 in 1 year with a plant of 1,200 people. In exit, it was $54,000 reduction in overnight deliveries. But we have 183 different teams looking for different things out of those various junk work things to identify. I don't want to discourage you, but I tried to determine how many meetings there were every day in the United States. just to get a baseline. So I figured, who do you call? 3M. They make overhead transparencies. They love meetings. 1989, 8.75 million meetings every day in the United States, it's estimated. 1990, 11.25 million meetings in the United States. It's increasing exponentially. 73 million every day in the world. How many, let me just ask, how many people here have been in a meeting in the last week that said, why am I sitting in this meeting? Anyone been in one of those? Okay. Or there's no quorum, or where's the agenda, or the right players didn't come. How many people have gotten a report across your desk and said, I don't need to see this in the last week or two? Anybody got that thing that you just threw away? At GE, we found people that were getting reports, carbon copies that hadn't even been with GE for 2 years. And they were still on there, still making all the things. So international paper just reported that we used in 1990 3.2 times the amount of paper in the office that we used in 1980. Well, wait a minute, what did we say in 1980? By 1990, we're going to have a paperless office. So we're being inundated with what we were calling junk work, and that's what we were trying to cut out. So I'm going to run you through a little of that and just sort of give you some of the rules of thumb that we used at GE, which we now have introduced to the CIA. The head of GE and the head of the CIA are good friends, and so we've just spent the last 3 months with the CIA with their Office of Personnel, doing the same thing, trying to help them to cut out the junk work so that they can gather information faster, so that they can, because they're on a downsizing too. So that's what we've got here, is we've got some of the rules of thumb for problem solving, and these aren't things that you go and use on every problem that comes across your desk. These are things you use when you're stuck on something, or you've got some situation just hit you, like a Gorbachev issue right now, or Saddam Hussein, or your kid coming in and saying, I'm bored, and you got to give them an immediate response. Something that puts you under pressure. The first rule of thumb comes from Jonas Salk. It's on the inside first page, and it basically says, whenever you get hit with a problem that's really difficult, reframe it. Look at it in a different way. And there are many ways to reframe problems. One is that you can say, what would I never do? It's the easiest, and most people will discount it because it's too easy. Another that's much more difficult is, use Jonas Salk's one, is create a metaphor. He says, he's trying to work on the AIDS, create a vaccine for AIDS, and he said, wait a minute, how would nature solve this problem? Now, we'll explore this part, and then we'll go back to the simple one, of the opposite. Jonas Salk, in the early 50s, created a Salk vaccine to wall all of us off from getting polio. Now, trying to create a vaccine for AIDS, just think about it. The AIDS virus mutates, replicates so fast that we haven't been able to have a successful vaccine. So they're struggling. And he said, wait a minute, how would nature solve the AIDS pandemic? What can we learn from nature? Anyone? What do we know about nature? How could that help us solve a problem? Someone says, how would you use nature? What's the characteristics of nature? It evolves. Good. It evolves. Neutralize. Balance. Rejuvenation. Good. Keep going. Good. What do you know about nature? Pardon me? Periodic. Good. Okay. Survival. I heard survival. We hear survival of the fittest. Now, from all that brainstorming, he said, maybe we're supposed to all allow AIDS to live, because maybe AIDS is here for a reason. It's balance. So with that mindset, he said, what would we do if we allowed the AIDS virus to live and not try to create a vaccine to prevent everyone from getting it? How would we approach it? Well, we would just go and try to prevent people that get inflicted with AIDS from getting Kaposi sarcoma and pneumonia and the various diseases that actually kill them. So that's where the whole research is aimed now, at AIDS patients and walling off the virus inside the body to prevent them from getting one of the complications. And that has been very successful research for him. Peter Drucker, in trying to describe leadership, recently has said, wait a minute, leadership is such a quality difficult to describe. He said, think of a symphony orchestra and use that as your model. Tell me about symphony orchestra. We don't have to be experts on leadership to understand what makes a symphony orchestra successful. Conductor, good, keep going. Practice, teamwork. Adjustment, harmony, good. Talent, selected talent, right in the beginning. What does a conductor do? What's probably one of the most important things a conductor does to guarantee success?
Practice.
Practice, good. Orchestrates the practice, forces practice.
Keeps them together.
Keeps them together, good. Building a harmony, good. Organizes it, what? Teaches, guides, what? Leader, what do they, hint, what do they pass out? Sheet music, too. Everyone plays from sheet music. Now, from all the things you just heard there, well, and you're trying to describe leadership to us in a staff meeting, how could you use a symphony orchestra? What key things there? How would that relate to leadership at Thomas Nelson?
Respect talent.
Good, respect talent, different talent.
Guidelines.
Pardon me?
Guidelines.
Guidelines, good,
Encourage participation.
good. Encourage participation from all. And it's necessary for everyone to have the vision. And everyone's vision might be related to their department, rather than just this big globe. We broke it off by the sections. So all I'm saying is that we can use, there's another example of using a metaphor to describe a very difficult thing. If anyone wants more information on that, that's Harvard Business Review, October 1989, called The Innovating Organization. Drucker's favorite metaphor is the symphony orchestra. Now, my favorite technique, because I think it's the simplest, and that way you'll make it a habit, is ask the opposite of everything. It probably goes a little bit along with my dyslexia of seeing things in opposite, but one of the things that I've noticed is that thousands of years ago, they said the sun rises, the sun sets, everything goes to the opposite. So look at problems backwards and forwards and upside down. I was born in 1948. Things made in Japan, 1948. If you saw a product in the United States that said was in the early 50s or as a kid growing up with that stuff, what'd you think of made in Japan? Junk. Where'd you buy it? Dime store. Good. What was it made out of?
American beer can.
You got it. American beer and coffee cans, because you can still see the inside, still had the paint up. Right. Okay. 1990. What do you think made in Japan? Good. High tech. You have extended warranties versus back in 48. I mean, that was junk. You just threw it away if it broke. You couldn't get repaired. Things go to the opposite. So as you look, you'll see patterns continually. You watch the stock market, you watch any of it, you start seeing these opposite patterns go. So the favorite technique of Yoshiro Nakamatsu, the guy that invented floppy disk, is after doing some brainstorming about a product, saying, well, what would we never create? What would we never do regarding this? I want to give a home example because I think examples at the dinner table are much more powerful than examples at work. It was a couple of years ago, and my parents were just hitting their 80th birthday. It was Thanksgiving. And dyslexia runs in families. My father's severely dyslexic, left-hander, switched to right-hand, so quit school in 7th grade. Mom has 11th grade education. And we're sitting around Thanksgiving. My mom's rules are you can't get up from the table until you turn in your Christmas list. It's a good rule. You know Myers-Briggs. My mom's an ENFJ, which is good secretary, good structure. And so I turn in my list, being the oldest. My brother, psychologist, fights saying, why do we have to do this? We get him to turn in his list. And then I said, Mom, what do you want? Pulls out a piece of paper, of course, has her list. It's got one thing written on it, a new meat thermometer for the kitchen. That's all she wanted. I said, Mom, come on, Mom, what do you really want? Thinking in my mind, the There might not be many years left. Nothing else came out. It's what we call block. She was blocked. We hadn't stretched her. We hadn't reframed it. So a perfect technique then would have been said, Mom, what would you never want? And that'd be a case of you get her to open up. I didn't really know that technique or was comfortable with using that with my mom at that time. So, meet thermometer. Dad, what do you want? Wood burning kit. Great, Dad. Okay, they go to bed. I said to my brother, I said, Larry, come on, that's not too exciting. We'll get him that, but what else can we get him? So we made a list, a short list of stuff, and I said, Larry, I've heard of this technique and I like to use it, but let's just try it. What would we never buy them? My brother first, I don't mean to embarrass him, my brother's first comments were a box of condoms, bikini, CD, computer, and he starts throwing out, and we spent 10 minutes laughing, making this list of all different things we would never buy 80-year-old parents. And then we said, what's the most outrageous here? It's going on and on and on and on. And the word computer popped right out as far as, you'd never go and invest bunches of money into a computer. So, no, we didn't do that. We went and bought one on sale. We said a computer would be great. Mom could put her, she's good, strong, detail-oriented. She could put her Christmas card list on it. She could put her recipes. She could put the will on it. They could do all those kind of things to prepare them for nursing homes and life care facilities and all that. So we bought them that. It's Christmas morning. We gave them the meat thermometer and the wood-burning kit to play it safe. And then you pass Mom the big box. And she opens it like every mother in America, slowly saving the wrapping paper. And she reads off, TV monitor, 10-inch, and she shouts out, just what I wanted, a TV for the kitchen. You know when you're going down. Everyone's staring at you. And I'm going, especially my brother, because we had split the cost in this thing. And I passed the CPU unit to Dad. He opens it. Tough to open study guides with arthritis because it's all shrink wrapped so tightly. And he gets to that study guide for the word processing package that goes with it. And he looks right at me because my brother's still staring at me and he goes, why'd you talk your brother into this? Well, we thought it was going to be a great idea, Dad. Come on, just get into it. And then he said to Killer, he said, because I'm going to be dead before I get to this damn study guide. We go, oh no, we've had it. We've just wasted $1,000. We're down and we're not going to be able to return it. My mom wants us to return it. We said, Mom, come on, just play with it. You know death to a president is when your mother says, take it to your room. So we set it up in our room. We played with it. We felt guilty. And 3 months go by. My parents happened to go to during those 3 months, happened to have gone to a New Year's Eve party in the community and told all the neighbors, stupid present. My parents are the oldest in the community. And all the young people said, our kids would love to use that computer. During the 3-month period, kids kept walking over to my parents' home and said, can we use that computer for our homework? Can we do this? And my parents slowly, through nature, learned how to use the computer. And on April 9th, I got my first letter typed on the computer. Now, it's the only thing I have framed in my office because I think it's my personal best accomplishment. And all I can say is that if we had never gone and said, what would you never do? We would have never stretched them to that part, or stretched myself and learned so much. It's emotional for me now because my father recently passed away. And as we get my mom ready for life care, she was filling out the application 2 weeks ago. I had gone home to help her with it. And under hobby, she put one thing, computer. So the reason, again, why I say it is that stretching. Play it safe, get the meat thermometer, get the wood burning kit, but stretch and look at that. So I'm going to have a couple homework assignments at the end of the hour to try to stretch it. Now, so that's the opposite. So any type of project that comes on up, like you're planning a budget, you're saying, okay, what do I need in my budget? Go and say, what would we never do? What would we never put in the budget? Someone just throw out some challenging thing that you might be faced with, some question or some dumb question. Anything. And you can make it up. I don't care. I'm just going to ad-lib this.
That we never put in the budget?
No, any question about anything. It doesn't have to be
Regarding
fun.
the budget question, we never put any more money in our budget.
Good. Okay. Well, tell me about. Okay. So what you're looking for is how can we get more money into our budget? Okay. That's the challenge. Now, what are some good smart answers? What are smart answers that we
Apply for it.
Pardon me?
Apply for it.
Apply for it. Good.
Yeah, if you don't apply, you won't get it.
Good. Okay, apply for it. Keep going.
Get another job.
Get another job. Good. Keep going.
Educate the higher-ups.
Educate the higher-ups. Good. Be more resourceful in spending what you have. Good.
Grants.
Pardon me? Grants. Good. Okay, those are the smart answers. And maybe a lot of the extroverts are the ones that threw out those answers. And a lot of the introverts are sitting back because I didn't give you the 8 seconds. Are going, yeah, my mind's going like this. Remember, that's where the creativity is. They score significantly higher. A lot of times they go and whisper to the person next to them and say, they're going to say now what I'm going to ask you is going to do the outrageous side. What would you never do to put more money in your budget? And just don't judge anybody. Just what would you never do and just throw them out. Steal. Rob. Keep going. What would you never do to put money in that budget? Pardon me? Spend it all. You would never spend it all. Good. Pardon me? Open new charge accounts. Would never work. Overspend. You never overspend. Never burn down the school and collect for insurance. Good. Stop eating. You would never stop eating. Okay. Now, let's take a couple of those and play with them. For I think the most outrageous were stop eating and burn down the school. Okay? What could, metaphorically speaking, what could you burn or eliminate to create more money?
Credit cards.
The administrative office.
The administrative office. What things that you do during the day could you eliminate, or other people could eliminate if you form teams so that you could be more efficient?
Paperwork.
Certain aspects of paperwork, something like that. So it would be a way of burning. You're burning away fluff. You're burning away wastage. You know, to me that relates to trimming. Eat. This is called hitchhiking. When you're hitchhiking, you said you would never stop eating. So what about eating? How can you put what in regards to food, to fasting, to starving, to any trigger word can help you?
Bring your lunch.
Bring your lunch, don't put a rest.
Lean.
Good. Bring your lunch. What could you do collectively at lunchtime if people bring their lunch? Pot lunch. Discuss problems. Okay. Good. So have meetings that are more brown bag ones. We had, do you know Police Athletic League? The police PAL? We were doing a brainstorming session in Florida for them, for their national organization. And the hardest thing was trying to get volunteers. And so after they listed all the smart ways to get volunteers, I said, where would you never get volunteers? They started throwing them out. And again, they're all cops. So, see, cops don't laugh until the person next to them laughs. So it's sort of like a wave. They're always looking like this and moving back to see what the other person's doing. So we said, then all of a sudden one brave person said, the drug tank, or the drunk tank in the jail. You'd never get them out of there. And then someone else shouted out, well, wait a minute. Why don't we go and get everyone with DWIs, talk to the judge, they got put in community service, let's be a part of PAL as community service. 157 police officers in that room, and they hadn't come up with that idea ever before. Probably someone in there had, but didn't think it deserved any merit. They got so hot on that, then they spent some time, then we had them for half a day, and then they went and broadened that out. That was one of the things to take home. All I'm saying is take a couple seconds and say, what would you never do? Your kid comes to you and says, Mommy, Daddy, I'm bored. I just say to him, what would you never want to do, Johnny? Sally? See what comes on out. Okay? It's just the opposite way. It's a phenomenal, and it's so simple, most people are going to say, nah, it wouldn't work. You'd be surprised what comes out of the mind. Okay. The next rule of thumb comes from Aristotle. Aristotle said, if you want a smart answer, you've got to ask a dumb question. No one ever mentioned that earlier. schools at all. And actually people go and talk about, no, there's no question, that's a dumb question. There's a lot of different statements out about dumb questions. Tom Peters, in his book Thriving on Chaos, says the effective manager asks the following dumb question every day. Why do I have to fill out this form? It's an interesting question. So what I would like to do is share with you the new concept that they're using in Toyota, which they just started promoting. It's in a new book called 40,000 Suggestions, which is about the number of suggestions they get per year. Toyota Motors, Japan, 40,000 suggestions. The average employee gets $8 reward for the suggestion. And that's it. But they think that making suggestions is part of their job. So they have these little cards that they fill out all day long about suggestions. And one of the ways they try to get to the root of the problem is by asking why 5 times in a row. Again, it is so simple that you're going to say, I would never do it. I said, when I've used it on my own, on myself, it gets you right to the heart of the problem. So someone throw out some type of problem, or anything. It can be global, it can be family, it can be anything. Anything. God, something's in your mind. Anything. Okay, it's too warm in this room. Why? Why is it too warm in this room?
Because it puts down right into the range to get fixed.
Okay, too many people. Why are there too many people? Okay. Okay, so they're interested in what I'm talking about, and so why? Why are they interested in what we're talking about?
I think it might help.
Think it might help. Good. So what we're getting to, it's too warm in here, but we're also saying we're all willing to put up with it because we're here. So okay, so pardon me? You'll get something in return.
You locked the door.
Well, actually, I can guarantee you that one thing is that when you have an obstacle in your training, whether hot, too much noise, if you even had been next to a construction site, people pay more attention. They actually seem to pay more attention when you have some obstacle because they're straining to pay attention. But so that problem, you just keep asking why. 5 times. And at Toyota, if something's breaking down, they go, why? 5 times. How many, I grew up in Long Island. We had to pick dandelions. How many had dandelions as a kid and your mother or father said, pull them out of the yard? How many did like me? You clipped off the yellows and just ripped? How long did it take before they grew back? A couple days. Okay. So if you don't get to the root of the problem and ask them questions like this series of whys, they'll just grow back. You haven't gotten to the root. So that's the simple one of doing that. Now, if it's please, anyone take off your coat. It is getting awfully warm.
That was the excuse.
Right, there's my excuse. The next one, rule of thumb, is that our problems today are vision-driven, not just problem-driven. They are so far out there. When Jack Welch of GE said, by the year 2000, I want to have a workplace where people feel comfortable to throw out ideas and they get rewarded in their pocketbook and in their soul for these ideas. He was talking 10 years out. And we don't have a very good understanding of how to visualize the future, of how to see it. To demonstrate that, we had about 4 or 5 quotes there. In 1899, the director of the U.S. Patent Office said everything's been invented and tried to close the patent office down. He was so scared that he was going to get rifted that he wanted to just close the patent office down. 1905, Grover Cleveland, coming off the presidency, said sensible and responsible women do not want the right to vote. Now more women vote than men. Harry Warner, 1927, said, who the hell wants to hear actors talk? Tom Watson, leaving NCR to start IBM, 1943, I believe it was. Brainstorming the first series of computers, the concept of computers, said the world capacity for computers is 5. Because, naturally, computers were the size of the Fort Magruder Inn. I mean, that was the thought. I mean, there's nothing wrong with any of these visions. It's just saying, that's our vision. My favorite, though, is Brian Epstein takes a guitar group to Decca Records for an audition. Mid-level manager comes walking down the steps, sees guitar cases, and said, guitar players are on the way out. No audition. The Beatles walk out the door. So they teach a technique at Apple to try to visualize, and this is something you could use for your budgetary processes or for any type of problem solving. To see the future, you got to do the opposite. You have to close your eyes. And so what they get people to do in a session is to say, okay, in 1995, we're going to need to create some new software, new hardware, and what's the consumer going to be the consumer interest in 1995? So everyone close your eyes and read a magazine from 1995, or watch a TV show, or listen to a radio program, or watch skywriting, or anything like that. Whatever you want to do, and you do it 5 years in the future, or 4 years in the future. You do it for 3 minutes, and then you open your eyes, and you talk about it in a group. Interesting stuff comes out. You can do it with yourself. The key thing is to close your eyes. We've incorporated this into the curriculum at the Darden Business School at UVA now to try to teach the MBA students to be able to go out 2, 3, 5 years in the planning. Because people have said we take 5-year problems we take 20-year problems and we try to solve them with 5-year plans with 2-year personnel and 1-year appropriations. You know, sort of impossible. So to try to visualize out there, to try to get out there, close your eyes. You can do that just by yourself in visualizing what will I need in my budget next year. Walk around your office with your eyes closed. Talk to them. Read a newsletter 2 years down the road. What's going to be in the newsletter? Different things. See what will come on up. It's a simple technique. Now, all these techniques don't require you to be a rocket scientist. And that's the downside of all this, because they're so simple. And also, these techniques aren't in textbooks. These are the techniques that John Scully at Apple uses. He calls it Back to the Future planning, and if you want to, I sat in one of the sessions, but if you want to read about it, read his book Odyssey. He describes it in there. Opposites are definitely Nakamoto and Salk. If you want to watch Salk, watch his interview with Bill Moyer, The Wonderful World of Ideas. Now, you're generating these ideas. They're way out here. They're just like, you come on up with, I want to buy this computer. You know it's way out there. What rule of thumb do you have to have about ideas? The interesting rule is that ideas that you come up with are usually going to be light years ahead. And what do you do about that? Woody Allen gives you the answer. Woody Allen was being interviewed by a reporter, and the reporter said, Mr. Allen, aren't you afraid we're going to be invaded by Martians? He said, no, because anything a Martian would ever say would be light years ahead of time. And you know what we do in the United States with ideas that are light years ahead. We ignore them. He said, but I want to be just 15 minutes ahead of everybody else, because that's the first person in the movie line. So, the answer from Woody is that you are naturally going to create an idea that's light years ahead. It's your responsibility to make it 15 minutes ahead. So when during the day do you come up with your ideas? During a 24-hour period, do you come up with your ideas? Mine's a shower. Anybody else? Bed, going to sleep? Driving, commuting, good. Anybody else? Yes, good, in the bathroom. So number 1 time, bathroom. During the night, 2 to 3 a.m., usually a key time. We've got a survey here, page 3. This is a top 10 survey from 2,500 people we surveyed. Number 10, while performing manual labor, cutting grass, washing dishes. Number 9, listening to a church sermon you don't really like. Number 8, waking up in the middle of the night. 7, exercising. 6, leisure reading. 5, during a boring meeting. 4, while falling asleep or waking up. 3, commuting. 2, showering or shaving. And number 1, sitting on the toilet. So there were more males interviewed in this poll, so this is more generic male. Does anyone take advantage of this? In Ames, California, at NASA's base out in Ames, California, in the toilet stalls, they have 3x5 cards with pens on chains. You know, because one of the rules of thumb is write it down. Ideas during the day or night are no different than dreams. They're free associations. They'll go away as fast. So one of the techniques we're teaching our people to do is a similar technique that we teach people to try to remember their dreams. If someone's trying to remember a dream, we don't tell them, well, go and outline it. Because one of the things we know about outlining is that it's not fun to do. Remember the rules, and it has rules. Let's see, A, B, yeah. Can't have an A without a B, 1 without a 2, and you keep going down. Remember before word processors, you got graded by how straight the lines were? Now, reflect back to Moby Dick. You had to read Moby Dick, you had to do an outline, and then you had to do the book report. How many of you got down to about here in your outline and said, screw it, wrote the book report, then faked the outline? Okay. Finally, I've caught on to this and realized, let's not teach our kids outlining first. Let's teach them how to, the way the brain actually works, which is called mind mapping or idea mapping. Virginia was the first state in the country, in the United States. It started in the UK, but Chesterfield and Fairfax were the keys in this state. They said, put a circle in the middle of the paper. So give me a word, any word, I don't care. Any word.
Great.
Shall we go for sex? That was, I never, no. We'll go for it because it's hot here. Okay. Sex. Anything, yeah, the red pen isn't working too well. So anything that comes to your mind about sex, I will write it down and don't worry about my spelling.
Good.
Good? So good, that was up there already. Even though that was for something else.
All right.
What else? Hot. Hot. Good.
Variations.
Safe. Good. Yes. Keep going. Spring. Offspring.
Low fat content.
Low fat. Good. Exercise. Right. Good. That's right. Headache. Good. Keep going.
Too tired, huh?
Too tired, I heard that. Anything else? 2 more. Love, good. Okay, anything else? Heart attack. Okay. Okay, now, we've clustered, these are words all related to the center word, but in the book Chaos, James Gleick's book, he said, look to the boundaries, that's where life blossoms. So look to these words and say, do any of these words relate to other words? And we will cluster them, put them into subsets. So we've got low fat, offspring, love, good, hot, headache, safe, heart attack, satisfaction, exercise, and too tired. Do any words form a subset? Headache and too tired. And heart attack. Okay. So low fat and exercise. Oh, okay. So heart attack could be both too. Okay.
Love, good, and satisfaction.
Great. Love, good, satisfaction. Offspring. Loving good. Good. Okay. Safe. Safe and offspring. They're opposite, so we'll just put that little thing around it. Okay. Now, what you do is you put your symbols at the top. You write your words down below. And then you look for any of these words here that all have circles around them. Do any of them describe what the overall concept is, or do you make up your own concept title? And this is what our children in 4th grade now learn. It's mandatory, except for Connecticut 2nd grade. And this is what they then create their outline from. But this is what's called a cluster outline. So the way to really teach this is for you to do it. So there's blank paper around. I think there should be some sheets of blank paper. Is that correct? Good. Take a piece of blank paper out. If anybody else needs good.
Come on, Charlie.
Oh, do it. 15? Okay. So if anybody else needs any more paper. Now, most people when they do outlines work at the top, go down. Opposite. Turn it sideways. Turn your page sideways like an artist. Think of it as like an artist tablet. Draw a circle or an oval in the center. Okay? Just draw an oval in the center. Now hand it to the person next to you. And so you're just swapping right with one person, okay? Or a person behind you or something. So you've got a partner. Just make sure to swap that oval so that you have a partner. Doesn't matter which direction you go. Okay, everybody have somebody else's sheet of paper? Okay, here's the scenario. It's a very important scenario. It is now about 22 at a quarter of. Our next speaker is going to come in. You have invited the speaker. There's a big poster out front for the speaker. Everything, fanfare. Everyone here is waiting in this heat for that speaker. A message just comes through. Hurricane Bob is preventing the speaker from coming. You go, my God. You talk to your partner. Your partner is the one that's putting on the whole day. And you say to your partner, well, let's go to lunch. Your partner goes, what's your backup plan? I don't have a backup plan. Your partner says, this is the 4th time we've had a foul-up and you've had no backup plan. You are going to speak for the 30 minutes. Now, you've also found out that you and your partner don't get along too well. So, your partner says, and you're going to speak on the following topic, and writes it in that circle. So, write a topic for your partner to speak on, and pick a topic that your partner might not know very much about. You're actually trying to show them up for their lack of planning. Someone in the last session gave this woman scuba diving. Another person did hemorrhoids. Anything you can think of. Make it fun. Make it fun. So you just got 15 seconds to pick a word. Put it in that circle.
Is one word? It's got to be one word?
Do not show your partner. Keep it a surprise. Don't give it to your partner yet. Just get that word in. If your partner is of the opposite sex, challenge them to see how much they know about you. You know, about males or females or whatever. Okay, everybody got a word? If you can't think of a word, Jell-O is always a great word. Okay. Now, here are the rules. Once you hand your paper to your partner, when you get that sheet of paper, you are to spend 2 minutes, and I'll time you, writing everything in your mind about that subject all around that circle. Your goal, we're in 4th grade now, your goal is you have to fill up that piece of paper. Hint, write large. Fill up that piece of paper, okay? Go. Put it all around. Put the words all around. Don't make a list next to the circle. Put words all around the circle. All around the circle, like we did up there. If nothing comes in your mind, you are to be scribbling. Make sure your pencil moves. No erasing. No erasing. No crossing out. No judging. Put words down as fast as you can. If you feel stuck, cross your legs the other way. It helps. Seriously.
You going to use one word?
Yeah, right. Just close your eyes and pretend.
One word to a friend.
Put them all around the circle. Seriously, be scribbling if nothing's coming out. Move that hand. It helps uncover the block. Even if a word doesn't seem related, but it's in your mind, throw it down. It could be an opposite or a metaphor. Good. One more minute of throwing words down. Fill up that piece of paper. Good job. What'd you get? Oh, great. Could have been baseball. $30 seconds, and then we'll start clustering it. Just keep filling out that page paper. Okay, take a break. Look at that, what you wrote down as sort of a dimensional outline. Look at all of it. And now, look for some patterns. Look for patterns. And start putting geometric symbols around words. Okay? Look for subsets. Look, don't show your partner what you came up with yet. You're going to have the opportunity in a moment. But look for subsets. Look for patterns that you can put circles and squares and all around. And once you get the patterns made, go on another sheet of paper, on the same sheet of paper, make your outline, like that cluster outline with the symbols at the top. Sure. Oh, sure. As many as you want to, yeah. But try to have a couple of things in each category. You know, look for the broader. I think, Earlene, this is a more advanced group than the first one. Yeah.
What are we supposed to do next? Make an outline?
1 minute to completion. Your completion is an outline like this. And completion is just this. You can either throw it away or, yeah, that's one of those ones you just throw away then. Yeah, put a squiggly around. You talk to your partner. You have a 1 minute version of your talk to your partner now.
Flat Earth Society. You really did. I could go contrast my philosophy over
Now I need to ask the big question. What happened doing it this way than if I had said, okay, we got this new technique, it's called outlining, where you start Roman numeral 1, A, B, 1, 2, 3. You got 5 minutes to do a talk on that subject, but you got to do it in a normal outline. What's the difference? You would spend more time on the normal outline than the categories. Okay. Faster. More fun. Sometimes it can be energizing. More variety. Good. More relationships. See patterns.
It has no border.
No border. Good. It's boundaryless.
This is an outline.
It is in its own text, yes. The cluster outline, that's what it actually
That's
called.
all it's all about. I always did it back in first grade.
Right, exactly.
See-
But this is a...
See, I've been back when you was like I do everybody else. I'm so damn old. So what you said is new. Back when I
Exactly.
was young.
Well,
It's coming back in now.
that's right. Well, that's what we said about Ecclesiastes. There's nothing new under the sun. Right. No, actually, what this is a technique that you can use as yourself, by yourself, or on a wall with 4 people on a marker board. Here is your homework. Your homework is, at your dining room table, after your dishes were cleared, put a white piece of paper in the middle of the table. Write the word weekend. Give everyone in your family a crayon or a pencil and say, so what do you want to do this weekend? Allow them to write down, spin the paper around, draw arrows, and see how you can do some things differently. Your next vacation you're planning, use an opposite technique. Say, well, where would we never want to go? See what comes on out. Just look for opportunities so you can use some of these techniques, even visualize being there. Okay, remember as we started, Oliver Wendell Holmes said the human mind, once stretched to a new idea, never goes back to its original dimensions. My goal is that you're a little different now at 1250 than you were when you